Hi, this is Patrick Casey with Overqualified Idiots. Today's topic is about the Depp Heard trial. Domestic violence is a sensitive topic, and I wanted you to be aware that none of the thoughts, opinions, or words expressed here are intended to devalue the seriousness of domestic violence.
Dan Casey of Overqualified Idiots here also. If you find yourself in a situation where you feel unsafe, where you feel like you have no resources to reach out, do please remember that there is the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. For those who don't know, that number is 800-799-7233.
Good morning. What's up?
Sorry I missed yesterday. I OD'd on chicken.
OD'd on chicken.
Yeah. It's sad but true. What happened was yesterday morning, I was like, you know what? It's Memorial Day weekend. I want to get some chicken and watch Obi-Wan. And I got to the fries, and it's it's the 8-piece for $7. So it's an incredible deal. What a savings.
What a savings.
So my fat ass ate like 7 pieces, 7 of the 8, because I gave Megan one, but she wasn't interested because she didn't have. We got the Rona after I came back from Atlanta, and so we all kind of lost our sense of taste here. But I gained mine back pretty quickly because I'm a lard ass. So, but anyways, and then I just ate way too much, didn't feel great, passed out. And then you called me, and I was like, oh crap, that's right. And I was and then I bailed.
You overdosed on fried chicken.
I didn't even go to my brother's house last night. I just stayed home and I watched Stranger Things. Holy crap, that show's scary now. We started watching season 4.
Yeah, I've got 2 episodes left.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm on episode 3. It's gruesome, man. It's made me viscerally recoil on top of the chicken.
I hear that acetylopram is a good med. Just FYI. You got some anxiety here that's a little off the charts, bro.
I had to think, Ramon, did you have a brain stutter where you're like, acetylopram, what medication is that?
Yeah, I did actually. I really had to think.
It's commonly dispensed medication for education.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce it incorrectly?
Oh, you butchered the fuck out of it.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. No, you can just say
acetylopram.
You can just say Lexapro. It's cool. I'll know what you mean.
Lexapro.
There you go. It's way easier to say.
I just had to squint my brain at that for a second and be like, what the fuck did he just say?
That's all right, dude. Hey, you're a lawyer.
Yeah, no, I try not to make fun of people who pronounce things wrong because it just means they learned it by reading it.
Right, exactly. And the drug names usually don't have any base in like a language. Like, it's not like Latin or German.
It's all just
made up googly gop. Like, I mean, like sometimes the names will describe the drug, like structurally, but usually not. So, like in abroad, they call acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, paracetamol, because the compound itself is there's 2 acetyl groups that are in the para position on one of the. I would say carbonings. I almost said hexagons. It's been a minute since medchem.
It's been a minute.
They're in the para position on one of those hexagons.
Oh, that's great.
Benjamin.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
you.
Boy.
Great.
Hell yeah.
All right.
What happened?
Fucking Lord. Apparently you can't have Cortana on at the same time.
Oh, what the hell? Because Cortana is apparently taking up all the bandwidth.
Cortana just wants to keep doing shit for you. They won't let you talk.
Well, and then like I'm trying to test shit, and fucking Ramon is just like talking a fucking storm up.
Yeah, I'm a chatty Cathy.
Yeah,
we pulled the string because I mispronounced escitalopram or some shit like that, an anti-anxiety med.
Yeah,
Escitalopram,
yeah.
Thank you. All right, now I know how to pronounce it.
I said it earlier. Okay.
No, but he said it slow enough for me to understand it. So there we go.
Welcome back, everyone. We're back. It's season 2. For all 15 of you who have been waiting. I'm Dan Casey, MD, and this is Overqualified Idiots. Joining me today, I'm so excited to be back. I'm actually really, really happy that we're recording again. I'm joined by my brother, as always, Pat Casey.
Hey yo!
I was about to say Esquire. I hesitated. I was like, wait, what are the letters? JD. JD. Also joining me is Dr. Ben.
Hey.
Dr. Ben D.O. I also hesitated. Man, I gotta wake up this morning. I haven't had enough coffee. Joining us as representing our, pharmacy field is Ramon PharmD.
Hello.
God.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I don't sound like that. I'm not going to do that the whole time.
Oh, okay, good. Are you okay, man?
I'm fine.
Okay. I was worried about you after yesterday.
Yeah, me too. I OD'd on chicken. Is how I would describe it.
You OD'd on chicken.
Yeah, hey, we've all been there, right? And so I had to reschedule these guys. So, to all of my fellow overqualified idiots, I do apologize for the last minute cancellation for my ODing on chicken.
Not overeating idiots.
Yeah, that's my other podcast. I participate.
Used to be cool and eat at. No, what was it back in undergrad when we used to go to what was that all-you-can-eat buffet place before finals?
Oh, that's right.
Golden Corral.
Yes, that's right. We used to go to Golden Corral, and we would go for like early morning breakfast. We'd study. We'd eat food as we go. We'd eat lunch. We'd study. I feel like we usually didn't make it to evening time because we're all pretty much burnt out on studying. But God, we tipped well, but we ate for hours because there was no rule.
Yeah, exactly. So other college students potentially listening to this podcast, we highly recommend it. It's a fantastic way to spend a day studying. But yeah, please tip your servers and waiters.
Yeah, tip well, please, if you're going to spend 8 hours there.
They're not going to be thrilled if you just, give them $1 after sitting at their table for 8 hours. So just pro tip.
Yeah, we used to go, it was Dead Day is what the name of because it was the day after classes ended, but it was the day before finals started, so the campus was quote unquote dead. And yeah, we did that every year for like 3 years. So, actually I guess this is a good small talk segue. How's everybody doing? It's been a while since we've recorded and chatted.
I had COVID.
Oh, Jesus, no. You okay, man?
Oh, my gosh, me too.
Oh, my God, are you guys okay?
Samesies.
So I'm happy and healthy.
Oh,
so there it is.
I am also healthy. I came back from the wedding, same as you, Ramon, and I had a runny nose. And I did 2 COVID swabs, but it was negative. I just had an cold or something that I got over in a day. I was worried I had COVID because obviously wedding and, planes and stuff, but everybody I knew from that wedding got it, and somehow I did not.
Yeah, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have gone around and told everyone to shout in my mouth. That was probably not a great. It was a fun wedding, but I probably should.
Was that legitimate? Like you did that?
No.
Oh, sure.
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't.
I just sat in a metal tube for 3 hours in the air, breathing the same air, being the only person on the plane with a mask on. That's what I did.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that was considerate of you.
Yeah,
a new
exactly.
kink of yours, getting spit or yelled at in the mouth.
Yeah,
it's
just not a wedding if everyone doesn't scream in your mouth. So
I don't know what weddings you've been to. I haven't been to those weddings.
Yeah, those are definitely not the ones I've been to either.
Oh. Well, you guys have not lived, and I feel sorry for you.
I do like that Pat had to seriously ask because said.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know if to be flattered by that or just maybe.
No, I could see drunk Ramon doing something dumb like that.
Present myself in a different way to others. But
drunk Ramon could do that.
Yeah, I'm not above that.
No, drunk Ramon could do that.
Oh my God, Ben, that reminds me of the bottle story. We were talking about this not that long ago.
Yeah. Wait, you weren't there for it, I thought. I thought it was me, Ramon, Shannon.
No, I was definitely there. I lived there. Not the parking garage, but still. Unless you guys had a separate bottle night.
No, that was the one where we were on top of the garage, and Ramon was the idiot and almost hit a car.
Yeah, we were... Okay, so what is the statute of limitations, Patrick, on minor property damage?
Minor property damage? Probably at the most 3 years.
Okay, we're good. Yeah, so this was 10 years ago. So We got drunk, no surprise, in college. We had a bunch of fun, and we lived in the fish tank, the multicolored house that was across, literally same like catty corner to the University of Arizona. And so we lived across from a parking garage, same parking garage that Ramon's car was in when we lived in the dorms, Johnny Blaze. So we went up, I don't know whose idea it was, I don't remember why we did this, but we went to the top of the parking garage. And we both had and found, I feel like we found extra bottles. And somebody had the brilliant idea of just like, all right, let's throw these over.
I think we were drinking 40 ounces. And so we had a big empty bottle and we thought, oh man, let's launch this. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, because there was an empty parking lot. There was an empty parking lot except for one car. It was a big fight. It was a acre or two parking lot. And there was one car. And so we were like, all right, let's yeet these and let's see what happens. Let's just destroy things because we're drunk and this is what drunk people do. And so I think we had a couple of them because we threw them. And then it got to Ramon's turn. And I want to say, Ramon, you didn't hit the car. I want to say you hit like right in front of it and the glass just shattered and like spread out under the tires.
Yeah.
And I still love that moment because we were aiming towards the 3/4 empty parking lot, and you somehow landed your throw right next to the one parked car.
Yeah, because that's my luck, and so the next morning I felt guilty, and I did pick up the big chunks of glass.
You forget the best part of the story.
What am I forgetting?
We were very concerned about what we had just done because we're a bunch of rebels. That's what we do. And we realized this is a terrible idea, and so we started running. We panicked.
We started screaming and running, and fucking Steven is like taking his shirt off almost.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, our friend Steven took off his shirt to become more aerodynamic.
Yeah.
to flee the crime scene. I
forgot that part.
We were very worried about getting caught. So kids don't make poor decisions. And then the next morning, I felt guilty, and I went out there and I picked up as much glass as I could.
That's right. Oh my god, I forgot about Steven. That's right, because the glass shattered his car, and I was like, Ramon, what the hell? And Steven he started his high pitched squeal and was like, and started running. To give you a visual, listeners, Steven's like 6'3". He's kind of a lanky guy, has a Justin Bieber haircut, and can squeal at a falsetto that I don't think anyone I know can match. So he ripped off his shirt, screaming and running across his parking garage because we were on the far side of it at that point. So we had to run towards our house. So we ran across an entire parking garage screaming.
Well, I mean, which was probably about like 300 feet. We live pretty close to this parking garage.
I don't know. It still made me tired. But our topic for today, it's very topical. It's obviously been on everybody's, minds, TikToks, word of mouth. And right now, as of this recording, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial verdict is pending, I believe, for Tuesday. So we're recording in advance of this and wanted to go into, there's so many facets to this case and so many things to talk about. It's perfect for Patrick because obviously this is what you do. And then with all of the medical experts and witnesses and testimonies and pharmaceuticals going on, I figured this was a great topic to just a banger of a topic to kick off the second season. So I wanted to obviously touch on the Goldwater rule as kind of a start, which I think even one of the experts who testified went into what the Goldwater rule is. Basically, in the 1964 presidential election, Barry Goldwater, some magazine, submitted a survey to like 12,000 psychiatrists. And that survey was like, is Barry Goldwater psychologically fit to run for president, to be president? And 2,000 people responded. 2,000 licensed psychiatrists responded. Half saying more or less, no, he has narcissistic personality disorder, no, he's got psychosis, what have you. And the other half saying, no, he's fine, or I can't render that decision, or something along those lines. It went on to Barry Goldwater, all the backlash from this, to him pulling out of the race. And in 1973, the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, I believe, is what that stands for.
APA American, yeah.
Yeah. Issued basically what it became the Goldwater Rule. Ben, I wanted you to explain the Goldwater Rule for me and tell me a little bit about what that is. To touch on, because you're more in the world of psych than I ever am, because you're in the thick of training. You probably have a psych rotation at some point. I wanted you to weigh in on kind of some of our expert witnesses and some eccentricities that we've seen.
Okay. Yeah. So, like as you were saying, Goldwater established in '73. The two biggest parts to it is that basically, like as you said, it's unethical for a psychiatrist, and this is per the APA's established rule. It's unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion unless he or she has conducted an examination and, in addition, has been granted proper authorization for such a statement. Then in like 2017, APA again reaffirmed that whole stance, asserting that psychiatrists should not give professional opinions about mental states of someone that have not been personally evaluated. Basically stating, like unethical if not obtaining consent, and they define what a professional opinion is even further, which is important for this case because we had two psychiatrists, which we'll get into, who kind of gave their opinion about both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and the testimonies that were provided. But a professional opinion is basically just characteristics such as speech, making or not making a diagnosis, for example. So offering a professional opinion or a diagnosis of someone they have not thoroughly examined compromises the integrity of the doctor and the profession. And it was stated that, it's the potential to stigmatize even those with mental illness, which of course, there's a great deal of stigmatization towards mental illness, receiving mental help, etc. Furthermore, when a physician publicly gives this professional opinion, like we had talked about, on a public figure without consent, it violates the principle for the Goldwater Rule then that a psychiatric evaluation must occur with consent or authorization. So, okay, that's all like the whole background with the Goldwater Rule, the 2017 APA stance, and kind of what a professional opinion is from what I found. Now we get into the actual case where we had, who is it? We had Dr. Richard Shaw, who was an expert psychiatrist hired by Johnny Depp's legal team, basically stating that the Goldwater Rule was broken when the testimony by the psychiatrist Dr. Spiegel, might be mispronouncing that, my bad. Spiegel, okay. With Amber Heard's team. So Dr. Spiegel's testimony, he talks about a few different things, and this is where I'll definitely want Pat to opine in, because this was kind of interesting how they did it, but it seems like he's still breaking the Goldwater Rule, because essentially what Amber Heard's team tried to do, it seems like he commented on a few things, like he provided testimony on processing speed, and it seemed like he was doing this in relation to try and when there's substance abuse or an individual who takes different substances, whether that's alcohol, opioids, etc. He was trying to look at processing speed because of the fact that, and by processing speed, whether it's your speech, is there delayed? Is it stuttering? Is there a delay in your thinking pattern, etc. But one of the things that he talked about was he was comparing movies and his processing speed during these roles, or in prior testimonies, depositions. Yeah, and it gets pretty fucking hilarious because he brings up things like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and then Johnny Depp's lawyers are like, "Well, did you see Willy Wonka?" And he just that's just
he just short circuited.
Yeah. So he watched depositions and opined on processing speed and tried to make a point about how substance abuse could be impacting that. And then he gets into narcissistic personality disorder, but he doesn't give a full-on diagnosis. And just for clarification for everyone, so narcissistic personality disorder, so under the DSM-5, which is the holy Bible,
The
Torah,
Bible
whatever.
of psychology. Yep.
Yeah. It defines it that, it's this personality disorder. It falls under a categorization of other cluster disorders, specifically cluster B, which includes antisocial, borderline, histrionic, narcissistic personality. But narcissistic specifically, it can be summarized as kind of this persistent manner of, grandiosity, a desire for admiration, along with a lack of empathy that begins usually at an early adult age, so 18 years old. And there's specific criteria within the DSM-5 that goes over, different characteristics, personality traits, etc., that comprise that disorder. And basically, to meet that disorder, you need 5 out of 9 of kind of these characteristics, traits, standards, for example.
You need to be real full of yourself all the time.
Yeah. And the thing that it seemed like her team was doing, and it seemed like how they were trying to skimp the Goldwater rule, and this is where like Pat can answer this, but it seemed like he was trying to bring up like, he was saying like, oh yeah, like he exemplified like, let's say, oppressive behavior or grandiose logic or self-importance, thinking he's fixated on himself. This is Johnny Depp I'm referring. But then he would say, well, I never gave him a diagnosis. I just said he had these traits, what it seemed like, based off of reviewing other testimony and deposition. So it seemed like he was trying to almost skirt the Goldwater rule by talking about other characteristics.
Yeah,
instead.
Pat, how does, because he brought up a good point during his testimony. There were, I mean, if TikTok doesn't quite do justice to all of his testimony, I think there are times where he came across professional. I think TikTok had a field day with a lot of the more eccentric moments. But he talked about how Goldwater rule is very limiting in terms of all psychological evaluations in courtrooms. So how do people appropriately skirt these rules, and what did he do, and what did he do wrong, if he did anything, or what's your evaluation?
Okay, so he went too far, I'd say about a half a dozen times, by applying general principles to Mr. Depp. He violates the Goldwater rule, and he gets hammered for it on cross-examination.
Yeah, he did.
Very, very hard, because he never did any examination, and his reliance on trying to apply these general psychological principles to Johnny Depp and saying he's guy, I know it when I see it, type of approach. You know what I mean? He really just seemed like a kook. He seemed like a fraud, and it did not play well to the jury, because when because he literally was basically saying whatever Heard's attorneys wanted him to say, which is to apply these general principles of psychology that they could have later argued. So what you do is you put on an expert to say, oh, these are these psychological traits, this is what you portray, and then you go back and play parts of the testimony that apply. You play parts of the recall parts of the testimony that show, yeah, look how he acted here and look how he acted there. This is that type of thing. So it's argument later, not for testimony now. And that's where where Spiegel goes too far, is he can't rely on a cognitive test given by Depp's doctor on one occasion, many moons ago, to give a diagnosis. That's not appropriate, and it's not sufficient to render a diagnosis. You need, data from an MMP2 test.
Right,
because they had personality test.
Right,
because I'm getting to that point. I'm getting there, because there was a forensic psychologist that testified, that did that analysis of Amber Heard, that gave diagnoses that led to one of the most ridiculous cross-examinations I've ever seen in my whole entire life, where we were talking about muffins. We're talking about the muffins. No, the muffins. So. Yeah, who bought the muffins?
So,
and she was trying
was
to.
Was that an intent to undermine credibility? Like, did you say like?
Yeah, she was trying to go at bias.
Okay.
And attempt to attack her credibility. They're like, oh, well, you knew you were, you were doing this, and you had to come up with a diagnosis. And she's like, no, I didn't, and that got objected to, and so that whole cross was just god awful. And the psychologist even says at one point, she says, okay, if you give me a chance to answer, I think we can move on from the muffins, because nobody cares about the muffins.
It's really
that's literally what she says, and so that's my first little piece of or nugget of, wow, this lawyer is awful. But that's the difference, is the difference between Spiegel and I can't remember the woman's name, but she was an excellent witness.
So the other guy is
yep.
But the other psychiatrist was
he was
Richard
amazing.
Shaw on Johnny Depp's team, and all he was literally doing was rebutting. Where basically he says, the thing that I thought was interesting is that, he even says he clearly broke it. However, there's exceptions when an expert can give a testimony, such as with medical malpractice, or if a patient had died by suicide, in order to review medical records and give opinion on diagnosis
that makes
and
sense.
treatments thereof that had led to that. I feel like the first case with the first testimony with Dr. Spiegel, all of it should be irrelevant because of the fact that, as he even admits, he wasn't able to do a formal exam. And I don't exactly know why that was, why either Johnny Depp's team did not allow it, or whether it was refuted in some other way, or what happened. But at that point, it just seems like his testimony is worthless then, because
Well,
what
let me
can
tell
he
you
provide?
another story about why this doesn't add up, because this is something that you just pointed out that I think is important. So why does Amber Heard get analyzed in the way that she does and Johnny Depp avoids it? Well, it's very simple. They submitted and agreed to have her. She didn't. I don't have anything to hide. I don't have any mental health issues. I'll do this. Forget it. Let's just deal with it. So she told her lawyers to do something that they could have easily objected to, because it's got some borderline relevance here. I don't know that the psychological disposition of either party is necessarily relevant to the ultimate issue of defamation, but it can be to show actual malice on her side, and it could be potentially to show it on Depp's side, right?
Yeah.
So, but their team, but the Depp team says, no, you're not going to do this. I mean, you can hire an expert to say certain things, but we're not going to submit to the medical evaluation, where she did, and they objected. So that's where good lawyer versus bad lawyer. Good lawyer objects to something that they don't need to submit to. Bad lawyer has bad client. Bad client says, I don't have anything to hide. I'm going to do this. And we go, you got to sign this little piece of paper that says we advise you not to do it, and you're going to do it anyways. And so that's where that's my supposition from this situation, but that's to let you know that's why there's a difference in what testimony was offered. And that's why they had a counter psychologist to Depp's psychologist on Heard's side, to say that she doesn't have those. And yeah, she actually torpedoed their case too. So both psychologists on Heard and Depp were very favorable to Depp. So,
well, yeah, Depp's psychiatrist, excuse me. Depp's psychiatrist, I don't even feel like he came in defense of Depp's mental state. That man came in defense of psychiatry as a field.
But what you have to understand, though, is I watched almost the entire trial at various times. So I got to see both of the forensic psychologists testify, and I got to see both of these psychiatrists testify. And the difference in professionalism between Depp's witnesses and Heard's witnesses were just they're worlds apart, in my opinion. Worlds apart.
And it's wild. So my wife Nicole and I are on this physician community Facebook page where docs can talk about life, investments, side gigs, those types of things, and frequently comment on social happenings and what have you. And this exact case came up. And the interesting thing was that I believe it was Dr. Spiegel, people were coming out in defense saying like, oh my gosh, he was a fantastic, psychiatrist at our med school. He's the reason I went into the field of psychiatry. He's a phenomenal doctor. I don't know why he came across that way on, testifying and cross-examination. And it really does seem like he was just saying what he was kind of scripted to say, Pat. Was that how you phrase it, I guess? Without defaming myself?
What they basically said was, this is what we need you to testify. You're our hired gun. You go do it. And he impugned his own integrity and went and did exactly what they asked him to.
Because his testimony almost comes across as argumentative sometimes, because he's trying. We have all know what we've written in terms of articles and scripts and papers and whatnot. And I get that on cross-examination, the goal is to undermine. But the way he argues was like, oh, I've written reviews on these things, so yes, I have written on this topic. And the combativeness is something that I haven't seen from, I obviously haven't seen many, but many expert witness testifying. Does that happen a lot, Pat?
Well, what's the question? What does what happen a lot? I'm
do
sorry.
experts, witnesses get combative when they get questioned on their expertise?
I guess
they let their emotions take over.
Let me think. In my experience, the analysts for an expert witness that testifies, when they're being cross-examined more specifically, they're trying to figure out what you're trying to get out of them. They're trying to figure out how you're there to trip them up. And so instead of active listening, which is listening to provide a response, they're not just active listening. They're using, I think, part of their creative side of their brain to respond to some of these questions, which gets them in trouble. And so, yes, when you are there to try to defend an indefensible position where you have an unethical, a choice of an unethical behavior, which is to diagnose someone that you've never actually had the opportunity to analyze. You analyze something from in an indefensible position and then have to stand up to examination. You're trying to derail the cross as much as you possibly can. You're trying to be a politician. You're trying to do the non-answer answer, and that's what Spiegel did. It was really obvious that he didn't believe in the testimony that he was providing once he had the opportunity to be crossed. So yes, I think in that instance, that's typical because if you're taking on an indefensible position, you're taking on the losing position, they're going to score points. And if you're paid as much as he was to provide his opinion, he has to defend it and try to back it up. And at times it appears that he is just a guy from the East Coast, so he's super combative, which is different than people on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a personality issue too. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to defend an indefensible position, the lawyers are bad. They've got a bad client, bad expert, but he's not a bad expert, like you said. It's just that he decided to be a part of a case.
He's fighting a losing battle.
On the losing side of it. Yeah, exactly.
I did kind of lose my shit when he the sort of behavior when he was asked about the Willy Wonka. He's like, "Do I have to answer that?" I was like, "Yes, you have to answer questions in a trial." Has that happened to you, Pat? Have you had people just like, "Well, I'm offended"?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You guys know that I do criminal defense and that I cross-examine, hostile victims in cases or alleged victims. And yeah, they do. They won't answer the question. Or they will sidestep the question, much like Spiegel did 100 times at least in his cross-examination. And I'll just do what Depp's team did. I'll ask the question again. I will say, I didn't ask that question. Your response is not the response to the question. This is a very simple question. It's not complicated.
Gosh.
Just answer the question posed. And here it is. And this is the question. And so you do that until they actually are beat down psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and they finally answer your question. Well, thank you for finally getting to the point. I appreciate it. Here's my next question. So by that time, you've trained them. You've trained them to answer. And yeah, we can talk about Miss Vasquez's cross-examination of Miss Heard. That was pretty impressive stuff.
I wanted to touch on. Well, Ben, did you have anything more for the psych part? Because I wanted your take on it all, not just a reporting of it.
No, I mean, to me, like it clearly comes across. Like, as I already said, like it's a clear, like he broke the Goldwater rule. But the thing that I thought that was interesting is that there's no repercussion.
Could you get reported to the board for that? Like that's what I feel like that could happen. It's on a national, reported scale. Like if people know this happened, and what are the repercussions, if any? Probably nothing.
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
So apparently, like the Goldwater rule. At the end of the day, it's pretty irrelevant. Nothing's going to happen because I was like looking it up. Like it doesn't have to get reported to the APA. It doesn't seem like from the limited articles that I was reading. And apparently, like there was like something that happened, I guess, like with Trump way back in like 2018, 2019, something like that. I don't remember. I'd have to go into it, but to me, it's interesting that we established this rule to kind of try and protect the medical establishment of psychiatry, and in turn the patients or the defendants, whoever. And there's nothing that anybody does. I mean, what's the point of the rule then? Like, just to have like an ethical kind of law abide, like it's
just like in the Pirates movie. It's more of a guideline
and a rule.
But yeah, so I wanted to kind of segue to the ortho side of things. It's probably the one thing I have a fair amount to talk about and expertise to lend was the finger. The finger and how, I mean, mind you, two orthopedic surgeons arguing is nothing new. I'm pretty sure that happens on the daily, thousands of times across the country. But to have two orthopods take such vastly different approaches to a single injury was very, very interesting to me. And eventually, Pat, I want your your opinion on this too. But at the end of this episode, I forgot to mention this. I wanted you to give your overall take. I may have teased this a bit earlier, but what you think the outcome's going to be. So we'll get to that. But basically, the orthopod representing Amber Heard's team said this was a crush injury. He said it was a pinch or avulsion type injury, which I would, avulsion means like to rip off. So he's alleging that during whatever altercation or mechanism happened, the skin on Johnny Depp's finger was ripped off. And I would attribute that to something that we call like a degloving injury of the finger, where don't Google this if you're squeamish or have problems with a weak stomach. Degloving is basically when the skin or tissue on the finger come off like a glove. Usually you see it with like rings, like people catch a wedding band in a door or a piece of machinery or something, and they still have bone after, but they don't have finger. So he's alleging that's what happened to Depp's finger based off the characteristic of the wound. And it was a crush injury because obviously the distal part of his finger was a comminuted fracture, comminuted meaning broken into multiple pieces. And the typical way that happens is a crush injury, two forces applied on the opposite side of something. So his whole testimony was A, the nail bed is intact, there's no subungual hematoma, the injury had to have happened to the dorsum of the finger, dorsum meaning the backside of the finger, kind of like I think, yeah, like a dorsal fin. All that kind of anatomic language is weird, and as a medical expert, I will say it's very weird because it's designed to both describe upright humans and then animals that are horizontal, whether it's fish or quadrupeds. So that's why you get all these 4 or 5 different terms for the same goddamn direction. So the dorsum of the finger means something hit the top of it. Not only did he change his testimony as to how Depp's finger was aligned and how the injury occurred, what was very telling is he's like, oh, this couldn't have happened because the nail bed's intact and there's no subungual hematoma. Subungual means below the nail bed. Well, there was no tissue under the nail bed in that injury.
Wait, hold on. For clarification, you're referring at this point in time to Amber Heard's orthopedic surgeon.
Yes, I have not gone on to talk about Depp's orthopedic interpretation.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just focusing on the one that I find interesting. He says this injury couldn't have occurred because the nail bed's intact. It couldn't have occurred the way Depp described it, is how he phrased it. But you know how it could have occurred? It could have occurred if he cut it off himself. It could have occurred if he slammed his finger in a doorway, but it definitely couldn't have occurred with a bottle. That's fucking wild to me. I don't understand how you come to that conclusion. A, that sure, you could have this pinched in a doorway. That's actually how a lot of comminuted fractures and tissue injuries to the far end of the finger happen. But to say 100%, nah, a bottle, a full handle-sized bottle smashing the finger could not cause this. That's absolutely wild that you can give testimony like that saying, yes, this is absolutely how it could happen. This is absolutely how it could not. Pat, the way I take away from this, there's no way to know how this injury occurred. We can all speculate.
That's true. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and this is the difference between a bad expert witness and a good expert witness. This is a prime example of a very bad expert witness. And why is that? Because we know in science that is possibilities, probabilities, and likelihoods, right? Those are 3 terms of art that you hear experts use. If he had framed his testimony differently, he still could have gotten to the same conclusion and argument. However, he chose poorly by suggesting that he had the ability to say that it did not happen the way Johnny Depp says it happened. This type of injury, given all of these factors, the likely basis for this injury occurring was slamming in a sliding glass door, or getting caught in a slam door, or someone hitting it with a hammer or on a flat surface. Not saying that this is what happened, but in reference to how Mr. Depp described it, I don't think that is likely. I believe that it is possible, but it is highly unlikely that it occurred in the way that Mr. Depp described it because of these facts and factors. Then he doesn't get subjected to that cross-examination you saw, and then they get in the points that they wanted. But it's bad expert, bad trial prep, bad client. You heard me say it already through this. Bad expert witness, bad trial prep, bad lawyers, bad client. I'll throw the bad lawyers. These are terrible lawyers. Mr. Rottenborn is the only lawyer on that, and he's the one who objected to his own question, by the way. But he's the only one, and the problem is he's the only one that's I would describe as competent on that, in that whole group that I've observed. And that's just because he knows the law well. He knows the rules of evidence very well, because you'll see him limiting what the Depp team does. So he's very understanding of the rules of evidence and the rules of law. It's just that these lawyers don't know how to relate to a jury any more than Amber Heard knows how to relate to other humans. So
oh, damn, shots fired. Holy shit.
Yeah. So it's a bad expert. He made poor choices in his word and his verbiage, because you're right. You can't just say, when you weren't there as a precipient witness, that it didn't happen that way as an expert, because there's what's possible, and there's what's probable, and there's what's likely. And likelihood percentages maybe would be a little going too far, but using those 3 terms of art, and I believe that this is highly likely how it occurred, but I wasn't there. This is what you're saying, Mr. Chu or whoever cross-examined him. Yeah, that is possible, but I find it to be highly unlikely based on these facts. And if he just kept repeating that phrase, then he's completely undermines the cross. He actually looks like he's credible, because he's conceding, yeah, is it possible it's the way he described? But geez, because of that subcutaneous bruising that's not there, you would expect to see these in that type of injury or that trajectory as he describes it. And I just don't see it. It's not there in the bruising pattern. It's not there in the medical record. And our bodies don't lie. And that way, people lie. You can say people lie, but
evidence does.
The human body the physical evidence doesn't lie.
Yeah,
and you become credible.
That's something else too. Is he mentions other things like, there's no glass present in the wound, so it couldn't have been glass.
No. It doesn't. That only assumes that the bottle, part that hit him shatters at the point of contact.
Well, no. See, the thing that was interesting is someone was talking about this. Sorry, the thing that was interesting about this is like. Someone I watched a review thing after, and the reason why, and I think this was refuted in the next.
That's what I was going to get to, but I'll let you run with it,
or rebuttal, whatever the fuck. But the glass, how glass breaks, is all dependent on the type of glass. So if you've ever punched if you've ever thrown let's say a beer bottle, or in Ramon's case, or
a 40 ounce,
which we have.
Yeah, we're experts.
Or if you're thinking about the glass for your windshield, depending on how the glass is made, and this is where I wish engineer was here, because all different types of glass, how they break, that determines how they're going to spread or how it's going to break,
right.
Whether it's going to shatter into a million pieces or whether it's going to compound in itself.
Yep. So that brings me to the other orthopedic surgeon. That's a really good segue. Yes, if it was a high-end tempered liquor bottle, it would probably break into bigger pieces, which you actually see the photos of in the evidence, and it's just what appears to be a larger size liquor bottle. And, similar to the testimony, when we talk about mechanisms of injury in orthopedic surgery, it's very, very useful. It's very, very helpful to both people like me and orthopedic surgeons to determine what exactly do I need to be worried about in terms of managing this going forward. And that orthopedic surgeon, the expert for Depp's team, did a very good job of explaining that part of it. That mechanisms, yeah, I can't tell you what, but here's the patterns I see. He did what you said, Pat. He said, this is likely what it is. He said, there's a very clean margins, very clean, very obvious edges to the wound that suggests a laceration, not an avulsion. If you guys ever tear paper, have you ever torn paper to where it looks like somebody cut it with a knife or scissors? Now try to imagine doing that with skin. So, the point I'm getting at is when you look at, if you have the stomach to Google degloving injuries or to Google avulsion injuries, they're not clean looking injuries. They don't have clean margins. They look like somebody tried to tear skin, and you can imagine that's going to look pretty gnarly. And then there's tissue missing. And so when you talk about absence of subungual hematoma, there was no subungual tissue to begin with in that wound, in that picture. And the fact that they talk about the oblique nature of it, can you still get a comminuted fracture from an oblique, thrown crush injury? Absolutely. Yes, you could. And I love that the orthopedic surgeon kept answering that way. Yes, you could. It can happen this way. It can happen this way. It's just what you said, Pat. So I think that's where the credibility comes into. And my own personal take, as a quote-unquote expert, I mean, mind you, I don't see as many trauma injuries in my practice, but I've seen plenty of fractures. Yeah, you can absolutely get a crush injury from a slightly oblique pattern, and that particular pattern of wounds of Depp's finger looked more like a laceration than an avulsion to me. So my take is that, yeah, that bottle hitting his finger and exploding absolutely could have caused it.
Could have definitely caused it. There's that you can't say otherwise, and that's why Hurd's expert looks like a moron, because of just that word choice, and it's just simple, and it's just poor testimony. I don't know who to blame, the expert or the lawyers or both. Probably more likely both.
Probably both, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Would you so this is just a question then if you're calling this individual as an expert witness then on your team, Pat, then in turn are you also going to train them on word choice per se, or how is it, how do you go about
So anytime you put
that then? They're a witness.
Yeah. So anytime I have a witness that's going to testify, it doesn't matter expert or otherwise, typically what I try to train them to do is answer a subset of questions a certain way. If there's no why in it, there's only about 4 responses that I would like them to respond in a certain way. And I'm not going to give away my trade secrets off of the mic. I can tell you exactly what this is. What I tell my witnesses, and what I tell my expert witness. But when it comes to expert witnesses, it's different than a lay witness. I let them tell me.
Yeah.
So if they're my expert and they've analyzed everything, I don't do the talking when I'm examining them. They do the talking. I let them do what all of you saw Depp's expert witnesses do, is they just keep talking until the other side objects his narrative, and then another question comes. Okay? That is completely different than what you saw from Hurd's expert witnesses, because I can't remember her name to save her life. The older older female attorney on Hurd's side.
You said it yesterday. Yeah.
I know. I couldn't remember it right now. It doesn't matter. It's immaterial. She interrupts her own experts. That's poor form. So you let your experts, you get out of the way. It's not about you. It's about the expert. And so, but even with the expert, I'm like, okay, you do you. They're going to try to cut you off on these questions. Again, still the same 4 questions or 4 responses that I want you to do. But when we go back on redirect, I'm going to say, you seem like I'm going to note every single question that you answered with reservation and go, you seem to have some reservation about this response because they're asking such a narrow question. Could you explain this? And then boom, they go off and explain and qualify their answer. And now all those tricks on cross-examination are completely undone, and the expert gets to offer their opinion a second time, and all it just looks like lawyer tricks. It's not as effective. So that's how I approach my expert witnesses, is they tell the story. I'm not the expert. In fact, if I think they're talking to the jury and I'm losing what they're saying, I go, oh, wait a second. What about this thing you're explaining? I have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't know if maybe the jury gets it, but I don't. So why don't you tell them about this? So that they're getting that like 4-year-old explanation, which is exactly where any expert should be talking, is like they're talking to a 4-year-old.
Yep. Explain like I'm 5. So that's, and to kind of touch on the overarching theme, there was a lot of substance use in this trial, a lot, by both parties, allegedly, or even admittedly. So I guess I wanted to bring in Ramon a bit to talk about kind of, does it make you cringe as much as I do when I hear that somebody was taking prescription opiates, benzos, and stimulants to go about their day?
Oh, yeah. I've been sort of taking all this in. I haven't really paid attention much to this trial, so I'm just here to hang out. But,
always good.
But yeah, it's sad. It's sad when you hear that, and it's as a pharmacist, we fill prescriptions, with as much good faith as we can, and especially when it comes to things like controlled substances, we try our best to make sure that the prescriptions have proper diagnosis codes with them, that they're being filled in a timely manner, that everything checks out, that it's coming from within a reasonable geographic proximity. I'm not saying that this necessarily didn't happen, with whoever filled these prescriptions, but it's sad. It really is, and substance abuse is awful, and the people who have to go or who go through this, addiction is really horrible. It takes a toll and it ruins your life.
Right, and so I guess I just wanted to touch on, because they talk about MDMA use, they talk about mushroom use, and obtaining a lot of, essentially controlled substances legally.
Yeah, like legitimate prescriptions that were, obtained from a pharmacy. Yeah.
So, I guess first and foremost, how often do you see that in your own practice, where you feel like you question, oh, I gotta look into this? Does that happen?
Yeah, it happens. With every prescription that comes through, you just check. You do your part to make sure that you do whatever you can to make sure that's being used for a legitimate medical purpose, and that that you're not harming the patient. And so if you do have questions if something seems off, I always, and most pharmacists will, talk to the patient, get some more details, and do what you can, do your part to make sure that everything's looking good.
And so I can't remember the details. Ben, you might know this, as far as which of the cocaine and MDMA, those aren't prescribed, right? I didn't actually catch those details.
I think there might actually be a prescription cocaine product. I don't know the name of it.
There is a topical. I know for a lot of.
Yeah. So if that were to come through my pharmacy, of course I would make sure that everything checked out, that it had. It seemed like a reasonable dose, that it's, the patient maybe had failed other, first line, second line therapies that got to there. I'm not even sure what it's used for, honestly. I've obviously never seen it in practice, heard that it exists. But, I'd make sure to do my good faith effort to, as a pharmacist, to make sure that everything's looking good.
He had a host of different medications that I remember. And this is the thing, the trial's been going on for so long. Also, I didn't have this written down, but the Dr. Spiegel had brought up his use of Seroquel, gabapentin, opioids, and barbiturates.
Yeah, so not even controlled substance,
LSD,
but psychotropics too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seroquel makes me very uneasy being utilized with all of these other different narcotics. Just having represented folks that have legitimately needed Seroquel to be functioning humans.
Yeah.
So
you talk about mixing alcohol and benzos. For those of you who don't know, benzodiazepines are essentially freeze-dried alcohol. They are targeting the exact same receptors that alcohol does, if not a little stronger. So you mix those two, you didn't just do a double shot, they compound. They what's the term? Exponentially increase the effects. So all these things kind of make me cringe as a healthcare professional to find out some people are doing this to function what they consider normally. Not implying that with the Depp or Amber Heard, but there was a lot of alleged drug use. And so I guess that's going to bring me around to Pat. What do you think the outcome of this case is going to be, or where do you think we're headed in terms of a final outcome?
So let's just be clear about like what the procedure is, all right? So we had closing arguments, jury instructions. Now the jury has the case. They deliberated on Friday and they were sent home for the weekend. And they're coming back on Tuesday to continue deliberation. So there are claims and counterclaims, meaning the plaintiff, Johnny Depp, has made defamation claims against Amber Heard. Amber Heard has made counterclaims against Depp for the same thing. And the question is whether the statements were truthful, whether they were done with actual malice. Is the next question, because these are public figures. They're in the public eye. And so somebody says something that's not factual about me or makes the same allegations and they prove to be false. I don't have to prove actual malice. Someone might argue in the city that I reside in that potentially I'm a public figure because I got billboards up, but the reality is it's not true. I'm not in the public eye like a politician or like Donald Trump, for example, or Johnny Depp or Amber Heard or even Jason Momoa for that matter. But what I think that the Heard team cannot prove that the things that Depp and his counsel at the time said were defamatory. I think that those statements were true. I think that the statements that Ms. Heard made publicly have been proven false in most regards. Specifically the physical violence. I don't think that she had credible witnesses that I would believe that she was actually physically assaulted, and quite the contrary. I think it was pretty clear that most of her witnesses were up there reading from a script, as we've identified throughout this. Whereas Depp witnesses are believable for the most part. There are a few that it's just that are oddball, but not as many or as frequent as it appears on Heard's side, providing credible evidence. Now, the next question is, okay, so we find liability, assuming that we do on Depp's side, like I'm suggesting. The next question is, what are his damages? Like, he couldn't quantify that, and we didn't talk about this at all, but I'm going to touch on it right now.
Yeah.
On this damages side of things, we had like, well, she was more like, these lead actors in these movies, which her career trajectory was not that way. And then on Depp's side, well, he wouldn't do the Six Pirates movie, but they're saying they wouldn't have him as the pirates, and it had nothing to do as the Jack Sparrow for the Six Pirates movie. We wouldn't have him back, and it had nothing to do with Miss Heard's statements back in 2018. I think you did hear things that Johnny Depp was showing up late to things, that he wasn't following through, and that his star wasn't as bright as it once was back in the late aughts and early 2010. And so I don't know what his damages are. I don't think.
Yeah, how do you even quantify that?
Yeah. Well, they had experts that quantified certain losses as far as parts and things that were concerned, but I think they were effectively cross-examined. But in the rare circumstance that Heard's lawyers did something right in that regard. And I think Disney did not help him at all. Disney witness that was there, it did not help Depp's side at all. And the witness that was in charge of the DC movie, I'm not sure what, I can't remember if that was Warner Brothers. I think it was Warner Brothers.
Producer, or?
What was it, Ben?
Yeah, with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I think it was I think it was like he was with Warner Brothers. Like I think he was like executive producer or something like that with the movie, because you're talking about the one where he basically said Amber Heard and Jason Momoa had no connection, and need to.
Yep, they didn't have any connection on screen, and that goes a little far afield from what we're talking about. But you're accurate. That witness did not help her on the damages side either. I feel like ultimately, if I were a juror in this case, I would find in favor of Johnny Depp, and I'd award him $1. I really don't. I mean, and that would be a win for him, to be fair. He would be
Right.
exonerated, so to speak. But I think that's his best day in court. I really don't find that. I think that his own actions and choices, while it might have been relative to her abuse of him, his own actions or choices and how to cope with that led him down a really bad, dark path. And he really doesn't have a lot of loss as a result of specifically the defamatory statement. So there has to be that connection between what was said and then an adverse impact. That's why these cases, even when it's just, two humans, normal human beings, not these high affluent celebrities, proving defamation is a very challenging thing because, the statement can't, if it's opinion, it's not defamatory. If you couch just a negative statement in the form of, well, this is what I think, or this is what I believe. That's why I choose my words when I'm describing this carefully, because this is all opinion statements. These aren't fact statements. I mean, it's the practice of law. It's not the science of law. And so while I believe that the Heard lawyers were the weaker bunch of the group, you also have to understand when you have a bad client, when you have a mentally ill client, it is impossible to get them to let you try your case the way you want to. It's just the way it is, especially someone I've represented. I've been on both sides of in divorces and custody cases with individuals who have borderline personality disorder. And I will tell you quite kindly that if I know that someone has that diagnosis, I will not represent them.
Oh, you're going to work hard today.
Yeah. I'm not interested because I have done that in the past.
Oh, no, I feel that. In my
because then I am at fault. It is my fault. Whatever happens, I will get part, if not all of the blame. They will have no personal responsibility because of that mental health disorder. And so, yeah, I think the Heard attorneys probably are, with the exception of one of them. I'm not going to name which one. I think y'all know how I feel. But no, in my opinion, I don't believe that some of those attorneys that represented Amber Heard were at their best or were working their hardest, because it's a lot easier to work for a client that you like and tell their story than it is for someone that you find loathsome, that you don't like, or that it just
Patrick,
points the finger at you and things don't go the way that they should.
I might be reading too much into this. Are you, in your own personal opinion, stating that Amber Heard is unlikable?
Amber Heard is a loathsome individual for certain, in my humble opinion.
I will say I can't help but echo that when I take care of patients with the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or just traits that I observe. One of the things that comes up with borderline is something called splitting. Splitting is a pattern of behavior where somebody with this disorder or characteristics of it get what they want. You're the best person ever to them. You are amazing. I'm the greatest doctor the first time I meet these people, because they get, generally speaking, first time patient, if I'm just meeting them, getting to know them, a lot of my time, my opinion, my expertise, and generally we're able to work out a good plan. Down the road, if there's ever a time that I disagree or don't think something's appropriate,
say no to them.
Oh no, it's the worst day of my life. I am the worst doctor ever. I'm a fraud, and I get complaints, and it affects my patient review scores, which apparently are tied into my compensation, although to a small degree. It's awful. And so I can't help but, sympathize. Not that I would ever change how I practice, but I will say it does make my job harder. I'm always going to do what I think is essentially best for the patient, what's in their best interest, but goddamn, it is hard to take care of somebody who is difficult, who is just, struggling with mental illness, or maybe not even struggling with it. But yeah, so that's a really, I think that take is pretty common. I think most people are taking a lot of the same out of this case that's going on. Have you guys read some of the magazines that, I guess, not to get too political, but that say believer no matter what, and that kind of take on things? As somebody who comes from a background in evidence and, essentially coming to conclusions after hearing, the full story, well, I guess I'm asking Pat this more than anything else. Like, what's your opinion on that?
I ask questions of a jury when I'm picking the jury on that point. and I set that up in certain ways with certain subjects that I'd be again more than welcome to talk about off of the podcast. I'm not going to specifically go into it, but I do things to ensure that my clients that they hold the state to their burden, that they don't just make assumptions based on an allegation, and that there is a growing trend towards that belief that if someone makes an allegation, it must be true. But thankfully, in my experience, I have found that jurors do hold the state to their burden.
Okay.
And that they do consider evidence. And that's in talking to them after the fact.
Well, because it could go the other way,
win,
right?
lose, or draw. Yeah, win, lose, or draw. So,
because like there are people who are obviously just Depp fans and love Johnny Depp and worship the ground he walks on, who think he's probably not guilty because he's Johnny Depp, more so than any of the evidence we've seen. But like you said, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be in favor of Depp, but I wouldn't be surprised if no party really wins at the end of this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a finding of nothing on either side. No. Either I would be shocked if Amber Heard won any of her claims. That would be shocking to me. If Depp gets a very large monetary award if he wins, that would also surprise me. But I think that this trial here was less about money and more about the court of public opinion. Exactly, Ben. Yep.
Yeah, because how do you quantify your reputation? How do you quantify how people see you in the court of public opinion and just, in people's perspective in general? I mean, reputation's what are you if not your word? Your reputation's everything, especially in our fields. Ramon, for example, you handle such important things on a day-to-day basis, and your patients love you and trust you. So I'd assume for you it comes into play day in and day out in terms of somebody. Have you had that happen to you? Have you had people say they don't believe you or trust you for any reason? If you give counsel or teaching?
Yeah. What about the guy that wheeled away with the drugs?
Right, the runoff.
There's that, but I don't know. I just attribute that to just retail and just the general public. But as far as I don't think I've had anyone accuse me. Is that what the question was? I apologize.
Yeah, kind of. I guess it was hard to phrase question because
it's okay, Ramon. I tune you out too. So
yeah, no, that's fine. No, that's wise. That's a smart thing to do. No, not really. No, I don't know.
I guess it's just more like if they just hear what they want to hear and they run with it versus they just. What was it? What was the name of the person we picked? They listened to Greg because he's the person that they're going to go talk to about their prescription.
Yeah. Oh, sure. No. Or that happens if people come up to the counter and ask me, "Hey, I've got allergies. What do you recommend?" And I ask them a couple of questions, get some more details, and it's simple stuff, nothing rocket science. And I say, okay, I recommend Zyrtec. Zyrtec's great. Go do Zyrtec. And they go, well, my buddy Jim said turmeric, so I'm going to go with turmeric. Like, oh, okay. Great.
Well, all right, Jim's got a degree, doesn't he? I mean,
yeah,
for sure,
that's fine. I mean, as long as it doesn't hurt him, I guess. I do put up more of a protest, though, if it is something more hurtful. I did have one patient that I had to beg to not. She was trying to put iodine in her nose because she wanted to. This patient wanted to prevent getting COVID, so I had to plead to this patient, please don't do that. No.
At least she wasn't trying to put bleach in her blood vessels, I guess.
Yeah, I thank God I've never come across anything that dangerous.
Step down from that. Good Lord. Jim probably has money in stock in turmeric. That's probably
that's fine. Yeah, I don't. That's fine. That doesn't hurt anyone. But no, I'm thankful that aside from the occasional blow up, I try really hard to take care of my patients, and they treat me kindly for the most part.
And I was going to say, reputation can be a powerful thing. So I think that's really, like you said, Pat, what is going to come out of this case is
a whole lot of nada.
Yeah, really. It's I was about to sum it up, and I'm like, wait, what am I summing up? What is the conclusion here? People are going to think what they're going to think for the most part, but I think that overall, Johnny Depp's team did a much better job in terms of framing how people will think about this case going forward. Did anybody else have any last minute additions or things they wanted to add?
Oh yeah, one last thing.
Okay.
You'd said something like who's going to win or who's going to come out on top in this and court of public opinion. Let's not forget the lawyers get paid. So that's pretty much all that really happens here. Is the lawyers get paid.
Well,
it's certainly not the charities for Miss Heard's side.
Oh my God!
Lawyers are getting paid. Anyways, I had to have that parting shot.
Just remember, the money she pledged it.
I know.
Hey, that money is still pledged.
That was the last set of cross. That's the last that they remember of the cross, and then the redirect was so horseshit that the last thing that the jury remembers is her arguing with Miss Vasquez over pledge versus donated. No, that's not the word you used, lady. You said you gave it to them. They already should have got their money.
God,
and the reality is they didn't get their money. I know. Oh, she did. Yeah, Miss Vasquez was an excellent
Okay, so that's perjury. That is perjury from the European court case. That happened, right? Or is it just language?
It's
there's semantics with perjury, right?
Perjury is it's got to be to an ultimate issue for it to be criminal. It's contempt worthy potentially. I don't know. It's another one of those things that nothing's gonna happen, and nothing's gonna happen out of that, I would imagine.
Fair enough. Just checking. I figured I'd ask while I was thinking about it. Well, This has been a more serious topic for an episode back, but honestly, these are serious things. But thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for being here. I'm glad we could talk about this. By the time this episode comes out, I mean, people probably, hopefully not have forgotten, but it certainly won't be as relevant. We'll be looking for the verdict here in the next few days. And this has been Overqualified Idiots. We're out on all major podcast platforms. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your support. To show your support, subscribe, follow, download the episodes, and we will be back next week with another banger topic. And thank you guys for being here and doing this with me. This is always a ton of fun. I'm happy to be back.
But what was your opinion of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
It was an average movie at best.